What the left has done in the United States is something very clever. They've suggested that they are the people who stand up for all of the various victim groups in the United States. And then by necessity, everybody who opposes them is therefore opposed to victims, and they're the real thugs, and they shouldn't even be part of the conversation. That's why whenever you see Democrats out there, they're always talking about how Republicans have nefarious and evil motives, right? They're racists, they're sexists, they're homophobes, they are only standing up for the rich, they hate the poor. That's the kind of way that the Democrats achieve their goal. Liberals in the United States don't want to have a conversation. They simply want to remove conservatives from kind of the legitimate mainstream political conversations so that they don't have to discuss what's the best policy for the most Americans.
You people over at Being Liberal and all the rest of you who call yourself liberals are not liberals. This isn't liberalism. This isn't even leftism. It's infantilism. It's the philosophy of children, because that's what you are. I know you feel very brave holding up that sign, speaking truth to power. You have no right to feel brave, because the risk of anything happening to you with that sign here in America is... Now, on the other hand, you see this guy? That is an individual risking his life to fight the armies of socialism. He's a hero, and you're not. That took courage. What you're doing doesn't take any courage at all. Like everyone else on the left, you want something, in this case, moral superiority, but you don't want to pay for it, so you just take it. See how easy it is? You people who call yourself liberals are not liberals. None of you are. You know who is a liberal? This guy. He's a liberal. We're going to use the image of this dead white male to represent the other dead white males who were, in fact, actual liberals. They were called liberals because they believed in liberty, which meant and still means simply the freedom to be left alone. The man on the right wanted people to be left alone. He believed in private property, strict limits on the power of government, freedom of speech, private ownership of weapons, and was the founder of the Democratic Party. The woman on the left wants the government to take care of her health care, birth control, housing, food, and transportation. She's a collectivist who hates private property, wants to expand the government into every aspect, not just her life, but yours as well. Believes in speech codes and political correctness, wants guns taken away from honest American citizens, and is the inheritor of the Democratic Party. The man on the right spent a lifetime of study, debate, and reflection trying to determine the nature of man, his history of rare success and frequent failures, and with his fellows spent a lifetime trying to devise a realistic formula for the pursuit of happiness.
Did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think a communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us. Well, I don't even trust you to do that.
There are people who seriously believe that they are wiser and nobler than others, and that the way to improve society is to have the government force people to follow what the anointed want, rather than let people do what they themselves want to do. And there are all kinds of fiascos that follow in the wake of this kind of notion.
This is how the left achieves its goals. You see it in debates ranging from the gun debate to even the fiscal cliff debate. John Boehner, who wants to be civil and wants to come to a solution, goes to the White House, meets one-on-one with the president. He comes out and he says, you know what, we really weren't able to make any progress in this one-on-one talk. President Obama comes out, he says, look what a bipartisan guy I am. I have John Boehner in here, and look how evil he is. That guy only wants to stand up for the rich. What a jerk he is. If he only cared about the American people, he would just do things my way. And this is why the left succeeds. The right continues to pretend that this is an age of civility, where the people on the other side of the table just want to have rational conversation about what's the best policy we can all agree on. The other side of the table, however, is occupied by people who are pure thugs. They are pure bullies. All they care about is demonizing the other side so they don't have to argue.
The labor unions and liberals are now attacking Walmart and saying Walmart pays its employees too little. I mean, that's a nice thing to be for. You know, you want more money for people who work at Walmart. What's wrong with that?
Hey, I want more money for myself. But that doesn't mean that someone else has an obligation to pay it. If you're paying people for their work, instead of just paying them for what they think they need, then clearly these people wouldn't be working for Walmart if someone else thought their work was worth more than Walmart is paying.
So why do you think liberals have jumped on Walmart? Because of its success?
Because of its success, that's a sufficient reason. They really are for helping. They're for helping people who are disadvantaged, as they put it. Whereas I think conservatives want to stop people from being disadvantaged. You know, the liberals want to help the poor while they're poor, but really the biggest benefit is to stop them from being poor, and that they have very little interest in.
I think the only way to deal with that is to label the people who are doing this as thugs and bullies. I mean, we need to come back at them, and we need to say, look, you don't want to have a rational discussion on this issue, and that's why you're throwing this out there. And the truth is that you are really the racist, because only a true racist, honestly, thinks of everything in terms of race, number one. And number two, only a true racist waters down the term racism so that it means just disagreeing with me politically. We've seen this in the United States over and over again. We have here a big controversy over voter ID laws, whether people should have to show ID in order to vote. And the left says, oh, it's racist for you to suggest that people should show ID. In what world is that racist? You really have to be unbelievably racially sensitive and conscious and really a racist yourself in order to think that that is the motivating factor behind the idea that people should have to show ID to demonstrate who they are before they get to vote in an election. But this is something that the right runs from. The right tends to start going on defense. Oh, you know, I'm not a racist. You know, when it comes to voter ID or when it comes to what's happening in Canada, I'm not a racist. I'm just trying to discuss policy. Why are you picking on me? The problem is this. If they accuse you of racism and you don't actively fight back and go on the offensive against these people by saying, look, you're a thug, and the reason that you're citing racism is because you don't want to have the argument. If you don't do that, the impression that's left with the public is that you are a racist, because otherwise why would you be so oversensitive about it and running from it?
I would go beyond the question of equality and put it more generally, that any process to ascribe any status to any group of people, equality, inferiority, superiority, must necessarily reduce freedom, because whatever the government wishes to ascribe to any group, whatever place, to use the phrase that was very common in the South, that blacks should have their place, whatever place the government is going to assign to people, that place will not coincide, that place will not coincide either with what all those people are doing or with how others perceive all those people, because there's too much diversity among human beings. To maintain any system of ascribed status from the top is going to mean reducing people's freedom across the spectrum. That's
We need to recognize here, the era of civility is over. The left ended it a long time ago. We're still fighting on this plane where we think that, you know, they have good intentions and we have good intentions and we'll be able to come to some sort of wonderful agreement. They don't have good intentions in many cases, and that's demonstrated by the fact that they don't want to come to agreements. They don't want to have rational policy discussions. We dislike their views as much as they dislike ours. And yes, it speaks to your morality. It speaks to who you are as a human being. If every time we discuss politics, you immediately go to calling me a racist, a sexist, a bigot, or a homophobe, there's no reason why we have to fear those labels, because those labels are false. They're lies. You don't fear lies, you destroy lies, and then you go after the liar, and you destroy the liar too.
If you want to be awe-inspired, ladies and gentlemen. And let me just tell you that those of us who do not believe we are divinely created, let alone divinely supervised, are not immune to the idea of awe and beauty and the transcendent. Let me invite you to look for a moment at the pictures taken by the Hubble telescope. Some of you may have done it. If you haven't done it now, or yet, do it soon. The extraordinary revelations of swirling, yet somehow beautiful new galaxies in color and depth and majesty like nothing I think the human eye has ever seen. Turn away from that if you wish and gaze at a burning bush in an illiterate desert part of the Middle East and say that that's where revelation comes from. I don't believe you'll be able to do it. Or read a page of Stephen Hawking on the absolute magnificence and consistency and underlying beauty. As Einstein says, the great miracle of physics is there are no miracles. It all carries on, holding together all the time. There are no interruptions in its order. There are no suspensions of it just to please Joshua or just to please some sect or tribe or group. No, it's much, much, much more impressive than that. Hawking has a colleague who looked at the event horizon of the black hole. If you could travel towards a black hole, not yet possible to do, if you could, in theory, the event horizon is the point at which the black hole is pulling everything into itself. So over into the black hole goes light itself. It's so strong it can pull light back into itself. It's really awe-inspiring. A lot more, say, than a crowd of pigs infested by devils running down a hill into the sea, which is a piece of sorcery and cheap magic of the sort that shouldn't impress any thinking person. Think about a black hole instead. Pulling the light into itself, the event horizon just reorganizing nature. So that if you could get to that lip, the lip of that event horizon, and fall in and go in, you could in theory see the past and the future stretching before and in front of you. You would see time, except you wouldn't have the time to do it, of course, if you were a mere primate, as we are. But Hawking has a colleague who says if he knew he was dying of a terminal illness, that's how he'd want to go out.